All right, welcome in to another edition of Beyond the Arc. He is John Gonzalez. I'm Bill Ryder. This is part two of our Western Conference team total special that we're doing this week. Happy Thursday. Thank you for being here. John, you've had a couple days to kind of think about and mull over your unders that you hit us with. How are you? How are you feeling?
So for those of you who somehow missed the first part of our Western Conference over-unders, it took to the very last team of the first part, the Memphis Grizzlies, for me to go under on a team. How I'm feeling is that the Western Conference is absolutely loaded. And what I'm excited about is the parity. I do think that the Thunder are the best team in the Western Conference. I do think that the Wolves are going to be right there with them, and that the Joker really raises the level of a Nuggets team that should take a step back without KCP. But the rest of this grouping, like going through that exercise and thinking about it, it just makes me excited because in the same way that last year, I don't think a lot of us expected the standings to shake out the way they did. There's going to be surprises this year where we're like, holy hell, how did that team end up, in the 4 seed in the Western Conference?
Yeah.
And, how did the team that we were really high on end up like falling into the play-in or whatever? And it's just so much nicer than the days. And I know producer Aaron is a longtime Golden State Warriors fan, but those years of like Warriors being inevitable, like it's fun.
Parity rocks.
Parity rocks.
Parity's fun. Timberwolves, you said on Tuesday that you think they're in that cluster with Denver and the Thunder. Vegas thinks they're taking a step back. They won 56 games last year.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, 56 games to finish third in the Western Conference. The number's 52.5. It's not huge changes. Joe Ingles came in, PJ Dozier came in. Who left? Kyle Anderson. I mean, they don't have a lot of flexibility. I mean, it's mostly the team that they have. I'll let you get started here. You like these guys. So you must like the over, right? If you liked him last year at 56 wins and you think they're in the mix, Vegas is giving you a little bit of a discount.
Yeah, they are. And I think the Kyle Anderson loss is a loss. I mean, he's a really useful rotation piece. They're deep into the second apron, and so they are kind of handcuffed here. The Rob Dillingham draft pick, I think, is nice for them. Yeah. I don't know how quickly it'll pay dividends for them, but in theory, that should be, some offense on a team that can be offensively challenged at times. Part of the reason that I'm high on them again this year, Bill, is because it's another year of Ant as he's like taking off and becoming a superstar, right? I mean, like Cat went out last year and both of us went, that's going to be tough because he's a lot of their offense. And instead of them floundering, Anthony Edwards really stepped up. And, Naz Reid, I'm high on him as the 6th man of the year.
You love Naz Reid. He's great.
Really good. So yeah, I am going to take the over on this just because. Do I think it's a 56 win team again? Probably not, but right in that neighborhood. And, we were talking about the Nuggets in part one. Nuggets were at what, like 50.5 or 51.5, which is a drop from what they were last year. That's around where I think that this team is going to be this year. 53 wins, 54 maybe feels about right. They'll be right there with the Thunder and, the Nuggets at the top of the Western Conference, I think.
Let me pull on a little thread here. You tell me if this is much ado about nothing. So last week, about a week and a half ago, right before we did the first part of these podcasts, when we did the Eastern Conference last week, Anthony Edwards had said, I think over the weekend or before that, to the Wall Street Journal, there were no skilled players that weren't Michael Jordan back in the day. Isaiah Thomas clapped back and got a little frustrated. Magic Johnson got a little frustrated. All of it's funny. None of it impacts on court performance. But any worry that Anthony Edwards is going to cross that line from really charismatic and funny to so full of himself, so capable of insulting all-time legends that it says something about taking stuff for granted, not going to the next level, not putting any worry there that it translates to basketball?
Not much, because I think like part of it, he knows, kind of who he is. I mean, he just turned last week? Earlier this month, he just turned 23, right? So he's still really, he's a young man. And I don't know about you, but like at 23, I said all kinds of crazy stuff. I was like I had takes and I was, convinced of this and that. And then I was like, oh no, I can see like a little bit more nuance or whatever. He's just so young and brash, and the bravado, I think, actually plays in his favor. And as he gets older and more mature, I think that he'll rein that in a little bit. But physically, he is taking off like a rocket ship right now. At 22 years old last season, he was a revelation. What's he going to be at 23, 24 when he hits his prime at, 25, 26? Like, we're not far away, I don't think, from him being like legit MVP candidate, right?
You're going over, so you're not too worried about Rudy Gobert's soul leaving his body during some of those Olympics games and
that was
Draymond
rough.
coming to watch. It was rough.
It was a rough Olympics for Rudy.
I'm going to throw, because it's a gambling. We're doing gambling content, these podcasts. I'm going to throw my good money after my bad money. I'm going to make the classic mistake. I doubted Minnesota last year. I lost a bunch of money too. I need to have to pay you guys a dinner. So what the hell? This is free. I'm going to go under. I'm going to go, which is a pretty significant step back, but it's going to be more about, I don't know that Minnesota makes as big a jump as we anticipate. And I think some of these other teams that we're talking about are going to crowd out some of those wins. So I'll go like 50-51 win season, much of it being petty that they cost me my bet last year.
That's a perfectly reasonable reason to go under on that being petty.
Pure pettiness. I'm really interested in New Orleans this year. And DeJounte Murray is obviously the big addition and a really interesting team. They won 49 games last year. Vegas thinks they take a step back as well. They're 45.5 as their total. And I don't know where you come down on these guys. To me, in the Western Conference, this team has the biggest possible range, or I guess I'm the least certain, because I could see them being way under this number, and I could see them being a 51-win team. Last year, they were almost a top 10 offensive and defensive rated team, which we've talked about as a really good sign that you can make a run all the way to a finals. They were 11th in offense and 7th in defense. Zion is amazing when he's out there. He's looked thin. Now, you got to be a little leery when you see off-season photos and sort of what that means for a guy's physique. But in theory, maybe he's in really, really good shape.
Best shape of his life season.
Are you New Orleans bull or bear on this thing?
I think this number is right around where it's going to be. When I was saying that I think that there's going to be just like a whole ton of teams in the Western Conference in that 45 to 47 win range, Pelicans throw them in there too. I like the Pelicans. I mean, it was a bummer for the way that the postseason went last year, but I really like the DeJounte Murray addition. I think that that's going to be great, and he's going to work really well with CJ McCollum. And Brandon Ingram isn't going anywhere because Brandon Ingram and his agent and his camp might have overshot or overestimated the market for Brandon Ingram, and also especially with the new CBA. And I think everybody just looked around and went, let's see how this shakes out, and maybe it'll be a really good season for them. I don't think they're good. I'm gonna go under just because I've gone over on so many, but I don't think it's going to be under by much. I think it's going to be 45, 44, somewhere in that neighborhood. I think their floor is pretty high. I don't think that their ceiling is very high. I think that they're going to be a safely playoff or high play-in team, and maybe they won a first round series, but that's really it for them. Probably
I said earlier
out.
Yeah. I said earlier, some guys for me are I'm automatically factoring in health concerns as that. Is Zion past that? Is Zion to a point, do you think it's fair to put him past being Joel Embiid level worry or Kawhi Leonard level worry?
No, I'm always worried about those guys. And even in the summer when it's best season or best shape of my life season in the summer where everybody comes in, like my back when I would cover the NFL, we did a bit for the station I was working for, and we'd ask everybody, and we just did a super cut, and everybody was like, yeah, best shape of my life, man. It was like everybody on the team.
That's funny.
Yeah. And so that's kind of what Zion is right now. Right. But that's a low bar because he hasn't been in good shape for a long time. I want to see him make it through a whole season. And then also the playoffs. It's tough. It's a lot to ask.
Yeah. Like Kawhi last. All right. So I'm going to go over, and I think they can be really good. I mean, I think they can win 50 games, even in this Western Conference.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. And you said it. There are so many teams that are clustered together. I'm going to lean into optimism here. And I went under on Denver, right? So I've got some unders that are a little, and those wins have to come somewhere. All right. We are at, of all your favorite teams, your absolute favorite team. We're going to get to the Oklahoma City Thunder when we come back. We'll see whether they're still your guys, how high you are. It's a pretty big number. It's a lot of wins. So John, you do?
I'm gonna little spoiler alert over.
John fawns, rightfully so, over the Oklahoma City Thunder when we come back in a moment here on Beyond the Arc.
There are some things in life that you can't quite explain.
An extraordinary story.
Maybe it sounds flawless, looks effortless, or makes you feel like a part of history.
The first ever goal for BFC.
And when all of those phenomenons come together, it's perfect. Pitch perfect.
All right, welcome back into Beyond the Arc. I'm Bill Ryder. He is John Gonzalez. Please, wherever you listen to your podcast, subscribe, like, download, tell your friends, spread the word. I'll spread the word, John. I don't know if you know this. Oklahoma City Thunder are pretty good. They won 57 games last year. They won the West. Just, casually, low-key, when added Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein, because why not? Let's load up. Vegas has them basically at the same number, 56.5. Now the under is plus money and the over is minus 140. So it's you get a lot of value, which I think is interesting, again, for how good the West is going under. But this is your team, and they did get drastically better, which is saying something.
They did get drastically better. If I was, the value, if I was actually gambling on it, would obviously be on the under. And I don't think there'd be any shame on that because, if they're a 54, 55 win team, they're still going to be very good. They're my number one team in the Western Conference. They're the team of all the teams that I'm high on. I'm the highest on the Oklahoma City Thunder yet again this season because, as you mentioned, top 5 in offense and defense last year, Bill, and they got better. The Josh Giddey situation last year, everybody knew that it was going to come to a head. And we talked about it where we're like, are they going to be closing with him in the playoffs? Are they even going to be starting him in the playoffs? And they decided not to close with him in the playoffs. And then they finally got away from, hey, we're going to ship him off to Chicago. Now, I thought in getting Alex Caruso that they would have to offload some of those picks as well. They didn't. So you bring in a guy in Alex Caruso to a team that's already an incredible defensive team, and you get an all defense caliber, second team all defense player, right? On top of that, he can knock down threes. So you're not losing anything offensively. If anything, you're leveling up. And then the other thing that they wanted to address last season was, hey, they're not big. That's not a big team. They're not big height-wise, and they're not big in terms of body shape and size, right? They have a lot of young players.
We talked about this a lot last year.
Yeah, kind of slender. They get pushed around. Yeah. The boards was a problem for them. Well, what happens? They go to the New York Knicks, who were an awesome, especially in the playoffs and especially on the offensive boards, rebounding team. And they pluck away a guy who had a career year and who, by the way, is also a very good passer. And I think is going to fit very well, whether you're staggering him with Chet Holmgren or playing him in tandem. I love this team. Over.
Can I give you a theory? 3rd in offensive rating, 4th in defensive rating last year, to your point about, can I give you a theory that I think I'm allowed to make? Because I'm from Iowa, I went to school in Missouri, and I lived in Oklahoma City for a long time. I think part of their advantage, you know how in Miami there's the Miami flu and teams come to Miami and they get the Miami flu and they
LA nightlife is undefeated.
Right. And there's real altitude in Denver. There's nothing to do in Oklahoma City. I've spent a lot of my life there. So these guys can only be focused on basketball. I mean, there's literally – you can go eat at the IHOP at 10 o'clock, everything's closed. And I'm only being a little facetious. And they're young, they're ambitious, they're driven. And the fact they came up short last year in the playoffs, and it didn't go maybe the way that they anticipated based on the regular season, there's not going to be any they're not going to let go. There's not going to be any come down. It's a big number.
It is.
I'm going to go over. I think they can win 60 games. They can easily win 60 games.
It's the second biggest number behind the Boston Celtics, who I believe were 58.5. And, I don't think they're going to get to 60 because the Western Conference is so good. And, they're going to have a tough game pretty much every night. But we saw them get through that gauntlet last year and no, they didn't get to the finals, but they are really positioning themselves as not just the team of the future, but the team of right now. And SGA, a leading MVP candidate, finishes second in the MVP balloting last year. If you won it this year, wouldn't surprise me. I look at this team and I don't see any holes. The Alex Caruso addition,
there's no holes.
Mind blowing.
And the Hartenstein, for the reasons you walked us through. Yeah, the Caruso is just, it's like KCP going to the Magic, but bigger and better in large part because this team's already championship level.
Yes.
He's a perfect fit. Producer Aaron points out that the AAA Dodgers, I've been to those games, are in Oklahoma City. But there's only so many times you can go watch those guys play if you're a professional basketball player, and that is exactly one time, and then not be bored. So
they also have that like canal that you can, that $2 canal.
Bricktown.
Oh.
Weird story. Quick story, very quickly. I once went to there's a place called Junior's. I don't know if it's still there. It's a famous steak place that's in a oil building. I went with a bunch of writers, and there was like a separate bar, but it was like glass around it, but it was soundproof. And we went in there, and all the old folks in their 70s and 80s were so nice to us. And then someone later told us, once a month back in the day, it was a octogenarian swingers club, swingers meetup spot.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they saw you.
Like, oh, this lady's so nice. No, you don't have to sit on my, like, no, get off my lap. I'll just give you the seat. It's okay. There's some things that go on, man.
Oklahoma City. Maybe there is more nightlife than you thought.
That's again. It's not the nightlife you want. So it's why I just focus on. Yeah. All right. Before we get into the details and we can talk about this, I hear Phoenix Suns and I think under. Before I even see the number, before I know that it's 47.5, before anybody tells me what's going. Yeah, 47.5. By the way, they won 49 games last year.
Crazy.
In my memory, it's 42 or 41. They won 49 games, which is 6th in the West. They got dominated by the Wolves. I lost that bet. They were 9th in offensive rating and 13th in defensive rating. I mean, it's like their numbers in reality are so much better than the eye test. Now, Mike Budenholzer comes in, so that is a significant change, obviously, as the coach. Durant looked good, really good at times in the Olympics, especially early on. He's amazing, but he's older. I think Bradley Beal's washed doesn't mean that he is, and Devin Booker's an outstanding player. I mean, 47.5 is not that big a number.
It's not, but it's the Western Conference, and as we've mentioned, they're like really limited in what they can do team building wise. Eric Gordon left to take a vet minimum somewhere else. I mean, they had to re-sign Grayson Allen and extend Royce O'Neal because like you got to keep your own guys, and they were thin last year, and I think that they're thinner this year. And
over the second apron, as you said,
Devin Booker and KD get you a significant amount of the way, and. I like Nurk. I think Nurk is a good player for that team. Yeah, I do. I thought he was a better fit for that team than DeAndre Ayton just because he moves the ball and he's better offensively.
And because everyone didn't hate his guts with a burning passion.
Yeah, everybody didn't hate him, and like he just fit in better. But the same problems abound. They are very, very thin, and if something happens with one of their two main guys, and all of us, or Bradley Beal, can't. He was. His availability was a problem as well. Like, just gets thin real fast. This is an easy under for me.
His availability and at times his ability, just his
that
ability.
Too. Yeah.
It's an under for me too. The only thing that gave me pause is the fact that last year they won 49 games, and there was a lot of time where those guys weren't playing together, like lots and lots and lots of time. But
and how brutal they were in the fourth quarter.
Oh, that's right. They were so bad. If only I had listened to my co-host when I had made a bet with him, I wouldn't have lost it. Oh, my God, I'm so bad. So we're both going under.
Yeah, we're going under. I mean, I do like Budenholzer. I don't think Vogel was the problem. I really don't. But Bud does make teams better. It's just, I just don't think they have enough. I don't.
The team that you are very excited about, we'll do one more before we break. The Portland TrailBlazers, who, by the way, we can do this maybe a different time. I think there's an argument. We need more information, but I think there's an argument emerging that they're the worst run team in the NBA, and I know that is absolutely saying something.
Including the Chicago Bulls?
Yes.
Wow. That is saying something.
Because it's one thing to have this sort of mediocrity and maintain it. It's another thing to have something that works and to squander it. I think there's like a different way to look at the same problem. 21 wins last year. Their drafts have not gone swimmingly under Joe Cronin. I'm picking on Joe Cronin, but I think it's fair. And it's the exact same. It's basically the same number, 21 and a half. They were 29th. There are only 30 teams in the NBA, folks, in offensive rating. And way to go. Really much better. 23rd in defensive rating. Denny came over from DC, and who am I forgetting? Devontae Graham came over, and they lost Brogdon to the Wizards.
Yes.
Yeah, 21 and a half is not a lot. You feeling like they're over?
I'm way under on this, and I think that they'd be happy to be way under on this, because look, they're in the Western Conference. They're a bad team. Cooper Flag in this draft is going to be, there's a lot of targets that they would want to add on here. I think they need to figure out a landing spot for DeAndre Ayton or Robert Williams because they drafted Donovan Clingan. And I think, Anthony Simons. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, somebody.
You're right. It's just tough.
But I would offload as many of those guys as possible and hold on to Anthony Simons and Donovan Clingan. And I guess Shaden Sharp, I could go either way on. Jury's out on Scoot. I've railed against this, but he didn't go to Summer League. I don't get it. I think this is a bad team. I think they're going to be happy to be bad, and it's an under for me.
Yeah, it's an under for me too. And by the way, if Scoot is not good, if that's a miss, it does. I mean, if Joe Cronin started to get in some trouble. Chauncey's been there. Chauncey was not hired. I was thinking about this. Chauncey, I'm not even sure Chauncey can coach. Chauncey was not hired by Cronin. He was hired by Neil O'Shea, who got fired. He got run out of there. He's been there for a minute, and it's not as if he hasn't even developed these guys to a level that's noteworthy or impressive. So I'm not sure any of these guys make massive leaps. I'm with you 100% under. How low could they go? 14 wins?
I mean, that's extremely low.
The West is so good, though. The West is
teens,
so good.
Mid to high teens, I think. Okay. Probably because when we're talking about 14, 15 wins for the Wizards and the Pistons last year, that's like historically bad. And they both had the Pistons had almost broke the record. They had a 20-something game losing streak.
But then they won some.
That's what I mean. It's really hard to lose that many games.
I think that Portland team is trash. I think they're absolute garbage. An interesting team, and I'm John Gonzalez, Bill Rowdy with you here on Beyond the Arc. I'm really curious where you come down on the Sacramento Kings. We're going to get to them and close out the last of these teams. We're talking about their win totals on the final and fourth episode of our special, looking at every team in the NBA and where they might finish this year in terms of wins and losses. We'll do that when we come back in a moment here on Beyond the Arc.
At CBS Sports Golazo Network, we're bringing you the game.
Madness of Messi arrives!
Breaking down the game.
This is unlike anything else in the world.
And changing the game.
Get it all for nil.
That means free.
Whoa.
And all day long!
24/7.
All right, welcome into Beyond the Arc. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see my cool Barcelona jersey, Go Barca, and John's fancy t-shirt. If you're not, you can check that out on our YouTube page, Beyond the Arc CBS. If you're listening on podcast version, thank you for being here. Please subscribe, like, download, and tell people about Beyond the Arc. Here we have another Vegas special where with the Sacramento Kings, they won 46 games last year. The number is 46 and a half. They're basically asking you to make a decision on what we saw last year. Now, this is a vastly different team. DeMar DeRozan comes in. I know Malik Monk's not a new addition, but I thought he was going to be gone, and they were able, it's a great bit of business to keep him. And he was really important to what they did. Harrison Barnes goes out. Davion Mitchell goes out, among other guys. Jalen McDaniels comes in. So there's some other changes. It's a somewhat different team. 2 years ago, they had a really nice season. If I remember right, they lost to the Warriors in the playoffs when they were the favorite, right? It felt like maybe they were on the uptick a little bit. That has sort of petered out a little bit. They were ninth in the West last year. It's a tough time to be in the Western Conference and be middle of the road, even if you felt like you had some momentum. Do you see Sacramento getting back on track in any way?
Back on track like what they were 2 years ago?
Yeah, like a legitimate, maybe we can win a playoff series team.
No, probably not. I mean, look, I like DeMar DeRozan as a human. I think his best ability is availability, to use that cliche, because he always plays. He's always out there. I don't know about the fit because he is really ball dominant and the usage rate's pretty high. And not for nothing, so is De'Aaron Fox. You mentioned Malik Monk. I'm very high on Malik Monk. You thought that until he got hurt, he was probably barreling towards being the sixth man of the year. And then he goes out and Naz Reid ends up sneaking it from him. But this is a good, competent, professional basketball team that's going to be a tough out on any single night. And I'm still taking the under.
Not a lot of defense. I think you need balance, particularly in this Western Conference. I'm with you on the DeRozan fit. The thing about DeRozan that's interesting is I guess the main thing you would say that he gives a team if they're trying to push forward is he's a clutch player, right? Like sort of end of game excellence, but they already have that. It's not as if that was something they were absolutely missing. I'm going under too. And I think some of it for me is they're probably more or less the same, even with DeRozan, a similar level basketball team.
Yeah.
And everybody in the West is getting so much better and so much harder to face. In fact, our next team to me is this is the team I've been most excited to talk about. The San Antonio Spurs. You've heard of this Victor Wembanyama guy. They had a nice little draft pick. They added Harrison Barnes. If you're just looking to like push for the play-in and or crushing over that, what are they at? 36 and a half. They added Harrison Barnes. They added Chris Paul. I know we like to make jokes about me and Chris Paul. Chris Paul wins in the regular season.
He does.
Everywhere he goes. I think it's an amazing addition.
He makes every team he goes to better.
I
mean, like I think
about the regular season.
Yeah, in the regular season. Yeah. But he's obviously extremely smart, and like he knows where to put everybody on. He's one of the great point guards of all time because he is awesome at moving the chess pieces around the board. And I think you are right. They like adding him to this team is going to like Stephon Castle gets to watch what Chris Paul is. And like, oh, this is how I am a professional basketball player. Like I get to like what an apprenticeship that is for that kid. And then also Wemby, like, you know, he's already otherworldly, but to benefit from like the wisdom of a guy who's been there in the NBA and been successful in the regular season for a long time. I think those are great additions for them. Yeah. I'm curious to see which way you go on the number though.
Huge leap from 22 to 36 and a half.
Yeah.
So do you want to go first? Or do you want me to go first on this? Because I have a set absolute answer. I'm absolutist about my answer.
Okay. I'll go first then because I want to hear yours. I'm going to go under just because I think that is a really big jump and the West is loaded. And look, everything they're doing in San Antonio with like, here's how we're going to build this team. The one caveat being that I was surprised that they didn't pick at 8 and like keep Dillingham, but okay, fine. Right. You're forecasting down the line that the Minnesota situation might implode because they're in cap hell in perpetuity. And like, maybe that pick will pay dividends. And I think it was like a 2031 or something like that. Fine. But the rest of this team building, I like it. I just don't think 37 wins is going to happen this season.
It's a lot. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. And I'm here for it.
I love this.
I'm going over. So I was talking to some NBA buddies of mine over the summertime, and I kept making the case before we even knew we were going to do this by these podcast episodes. I kept going. I was talking to some guys that work in the NBA and some assistant GM, just shooting the breeze, right? And I kept going. I think the Spurs can push for the playoffs. I think they can be a 30. My thing was like 38, 38, 37, 8, 39 wins, right? But like toward the end of the year, they're in striking distance of the 10, and they don't get there, right? Because I think, what do you have to get to this year to even get to that? Probably 40.
I mean, mid 40s. Last year was
44 wins. 40. Yeah. That's over.
That's a high bar.
So, all right, Chris Paul wins everywhere he goes, especially even with young teams, right? Oklahoma City back when he made that move. I don't know how big a leap Wemby's going to make, but I think it's entirely reasonable that at the end of next year, he's going to be a top 5 player and still with a long ways to go. And to your point, I like the pieces. They added Pop's a great coach. The only thing is like, do they want to win? But I don't think it matters. I think Wemby's too good to just lose. I'm going to go over it. Maybe this will fall apart because there's a wide range. Maybe they're going to win 31 games or 30 games, which would still be 30 games is an 8-game boost.
Yeah.
But I think they can make a historic kind of leap. I think they can be that outstanding.
I hope that happens,
as that sounds,
because that would be an incredible storyline. And look, there's a world where it does happen because Wemby is that good, and they've put some professionals around him. It would be a great storyline. I hope you're right. I'm still going.
And last thought, yours is probably the better pick. Last thought, I think Wemby's run through the Olympics and the level of competition, obviously at the end that he had to play. Mm-hmm. Not that he needs it, but those are the sorts of like whetstones that sharpen weapons, right? Like I just think there's a world where he comes out even more advanced than maybe if the Olympics hadn't been this summer in terms of the leap that he's going to make. Is this wrong? I'm still not interested in Utah because I'm tired of sort of I don't really know what they are. And I understand why they brought Markkanen back and he's there for the year. So he's there. And they were, what were they? A 31 win last team. They're 29.5 as a number. So basically Vegas is saying a game and a half of a drop off. I mean, there's other Chris Dunn departed. There's some moves. Penny Mills, some other guys came in. The West is so good. I don't know. I'm not sure.
They have guys that they need to get off that roster. Jordan Clarkson is still there. Colin Sexton might make them a little too good. I think for me, it's like Keontae George and Lauri Markkanen and everybody else can go, Walker Kessler included. Just strip it down. Because right now, they are probably around a 29-30 win team, right? It's kind of like Toronto of the Western Conference, where you're stuck in that middle where you don't want to be.
That's a good comp.
And you can't trade Lauri Markkanen until next season. So trade everybody else that you can and get as bad as you can for this draft and then reboot this thing on the fly. Although I could see, maybe Danny, no, I don't think he would. I don't think Danny could possibly look at where the Jazz are and go, oh, I can build on top of this rather than stripping it down to the studs and starting over.
Let's say that they wanted to win. The best they can be this year is 12.
Yeah.
They can't. So you're pushing me toward under. You kind of, because they can also sell these pieces. You're going strong under.
I'm going maybe not strong. Just I think look, Lauri Markkanen and Keontae George and Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson and Walker Kessler. Those are like useful players independently. And some of them are even better than useful. Some of them are pretty good. Lauri Markkanen and Keontae George. Those are good players, right? It's the Western Conference, and I anticipate that a lot of them are going to be gone. So I think it's going to be an under. All
right, I'm with you. I'll go under. I got to make room for the Spurs. Can the Spurs play them 14 times or 15 times to make
them
my
and the
bet
Trailblazers?
Possible? Yeah, can they play Portland half the season? That would be. Yeah. How many Portland games do you think you'll watch? Just pure guess, like 60% of the game or more this year.
I'm sure.
Go with me 2.
Yeah, like a handful, but it's going to be work dependent because you and I take the late shifts on HQ.
Oh, that's true.
So like maybe they're playing like the Lakers one night.
It's very rare I get asked. Yeah, you and I do those shifts a lot. I'm sure I've talked about Portland last 2 years during the season. I just can't remember a single time that it's happened. Wolf.
Godspeed, Trailblazers fans. What's your best bet for these?
I'm gonna go. You go first. I'm trying to think over.
Blazers.
I don't like any of them. I don't like. Oh, that's what.
Blazers under. Yeah,
I'll go.
That's
probably
going to be the worst. Depending on where the Wizards shake out, I do think the Pistons will be slightly better than they were last season. I think the Blazers are pretty safely the worst team in the NBA this year.
All right, what was the number? 21 and a half.
21 and a half.
Doesn't matter. So I'll go. Yeah, because I thought they were going to win like -2 games. So
yes,
I will go with you. Best bet on Portland. This was fun. How do you think you did? When we come back here from now,
probably terrible. For the first half of the Western Conference, I think I had all but one over.
I loved it.
By the way, my computer is about to die.
Okay, so we're done.
What a way to end the show. If I go blank or dark, that's why.
He's John Gonzalez. I'm Bill Ryder. This is Beyond the Arc. We'll see you back here next week.